welcome again after the break and after a round of jokes. So let me just briefly tell more about the panelists. And today's panel is about network automation journey. So what does it mean for us? So the first panelist is Scott Robohn. I hope I tell the surname right, because I never get it right, I guess. So once again, Scott is co-founder of Network Automation Forum and founder of TechSalesCraft. Scott has over 30 years of experience in internet infrastructure. We have to keep learning about network and helping customers with network automation. Adam Baumeister, who is Global Solution Architect at Palo Alto Networks, he is focused on networking and software engineering, and he's an expert in network automation and programmability. Adam is also creator of open source NetFlow collector, GoFlow. And Adam Grodecki, we haven't been able to before to meet Adam. Well, welcome, Adam, on the stage. Thank you for being here with us. Adam Grodecki is product line manager for Optical Professional Services at Nokia. Adam is a professional experience key strategy solutionizing dedicated to large convergent operators and enterprises within fixed and mobile networks, including such topics as 5G RAN and private wireless. Adam focuses on technical expertise, architecture evolution, business development, service monetization, and smart offering expertise. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here with us. And maybe the first question will go to Scott. I haven't figured out how to distinguish between two Adams here, but I will figure it out later. So network automation, what does it mean for you?
Well, there's what it has been and a vision for what it can be, right? And we've had decades of moving from scripting, bash scripts, shell scripts, to Perl, to Python. I need to say Python. I want to say Python. Comes out right here from my nose. But that's the most common tooling, but the arranging and sequencing of multiple automations, I think, is what will help the next generation of automation. Some shops are already mature in doing it. I think that's something that more and more network operations folks will make progress with.
Okay, thank you. And Adam Grodecki, what does it mean for you?
So when it comes to the network automation, it's just for me kind of a typical activity. We have a network, so we plan it, we kind of build it and deploy it, we maintain it, we troubleshoot it, then we are trying to expose or give an access to those resources, and then everything we do on those steps could be automated more or less. Everything we do in those steps could use some toolboxes, could use some applications that also very often are called automation tools. Yeah. And now the most important is that and it was already said during the presentation, this is not the automation tool which makes the automation running and actually being useful. It is the understanding of the whole process and putting that in place in the manner of, we are calling this now workflow, but it is the process itself. So the whole understanding of each and every steps and being useful in that automated steps. That's
okay. Thank you. And Adam?
Yep. So I think the easiest way I can describe it, what it means to me, at least, is the use of software to effectively not only save me time is limited, I'd like to save it as much as physically possible, but also to add capability to the network. So we talk a lot about not just using automation to remove manual tasks, but also we can actually add to the network through automation. So to summarize, that's what I think it is to me.
Okay, thank you. So maybe we'll start the next question with you. So because you've already mentioned, you've showcased us our example of a deployment. So how do you see the adoption of network automation? I mean, does it differ between the industries? Because you probably have working with different industries.
For sure. I mean, definitely certain industries, if you go to anywhere in the software development space, of course, they're more willing to adopt, newer products, newer solutions. They're more agile. They can adapt a little bit faster. While a lot of our customers, for example, a lot of healthcare customers, customers in defense and aerospace, they're much more risk adverse. They're also got a lot more manual processes that are more bedded in their environments. It's much harder to inject any kind of real network automation into those environments. And to be honest, in order to do so, we have to prove that it works over and over and over again. Luckily, automation does make it repeatable, generally speaking, and as an industry or as a community from an automation perspective, I think we've all collectively gotten a lot better at using tests and actually writing reliable automation. So I think ultimately a lot of the problems that we're seeing with some of those customers and in the general adoption of network automation is slowly starting to get better as people realize that the code that we write isn't always terrible and unmaintainable. Maybe mine still is, but others might not be.
Okay, thank you. And Adam, from your perspective, how it looked like for you?
So definitely it is varying from industry to industry. And because we have today opportunity to talk to many people from different, let's say, areas of development, I encourage you to take some time today. We have two other colleagues from Nokia, Marcin, who is really keen in security, and Bartek, who is really keen in campus networks. So imagine we are doing this in such an extent we can deploy kind of either the framework to audit or make a dynamic access to the infrastructure, or we can deploy a private, the whole bunch of stuff like the radio core and the whole stack of applications within a kind of a method of parachute and run. So in each and every industries, this is like totally different than we think. And I see that a lot, that very often we are just taking one method and trying to apply it in another kind of a domain. And then sometimes we are kind of not understanding why the other domain do not want to, for example, use it, or because it's not the industry specific. So let's exchange on the coffee break between those different totally domains. And what also is very important for me is that even when we were talking today, you were presenting that, for example, optics and IP convergence and this stuff. There is, when I'm giving kind of an example, when I'm sitting in a room and we have a 30 minutes meeting and I'm talking to the people who are actually running the network and they are keen on deploying new stuff in there, really I'm taking 3 minutes to talk about automation. That's all. Because if you eat more time, you just make the people kind of misunderstanding the concept why automation is important. Like in their life and day-to-day processes, in their industries, automation could be only seen as a kind of a value and tool, but it should not overconsume the effort that they are doing.
Okay, thank you. And Scott, because from your experience, you've been talking with different vendors, different services, the different people generally during the outcome 0 and 1. What are your feelings on that?
So I will pick on one thing you said very briefly. There are cases where even if it takes a lot of effort to build automation up front, even if it seems like an extreme investment in time that can pay off over time, building a culture that does automation first can really help embed that into how stuff gets done and implemented in certain shops. To the question in particular, I'll give you bad news and then good news. And this overlaps with some things that you've already said. The highly embedded older equipment where the only API is the CLI, OT type technology, highly, old equipment, highly deployed, where the best you can do is maybe expect scripts to work with, interacting with device. Those are harder environments to automate and highly regulated, so to kind of build off what Adam said in defense, in healthcare in particular, where there are lots of regulations where you need to prove that data isn't being shared inappropriately, like not unlike GDPR, in the EU. Those are challenges to getting automation done. The good news is, through what we're seeing in the Network Automation Forum, with a really good sample size in North America and now in Europe, people from all industries are trying things and looking for help with things. So we really feel like there's more wind in the sails than perhaps there was 5 years ago, despite the comments I made to the contrary earlier.
Okay, thank you. So if you were, maybe we can start with Adam. So maybe if you were telling me what do you see, because you've mentioned that you spent no more than 3 minutes on automation. So but what are the drivers? What do you see are the drivers for the automation that actually lets the automation starts in the companies or in the industries?
Yeah, that's a very important thing, because why I'm saying I'm using just 3 minutes of that, let's say 30 minutes window, is that the effort can be huge, but in terms of the value argumentation, it has to be concise and very kind of a simple. And the driver needs to be described, kind of presented in such a manner, because I'm always starting from benefits that actually not about cost optimization.
So you actually start from the problem.
I'm starting from the benefits that are more like real benefits, like the new kind of a monetization.
I'm sure that some of you disagree that cost optimization is not a benefit, not the important one.
Yeah, exactly. But this is because when you start, and this is kind of when you start from optimization of the costs, it's a kind of a trap, because like we discussed, I fully agree, sometimes the automation effort at the beginning is much higher than the average cost of operation for the next, I don't know, 1 to 3 years. And then, but starting from benefits, and I think this is the driver, is that how we monetize the network, how we are adopting the resource planning and resource kind of a deployment in the most effective manner. And then we can talk about, okay, how we are streamlining the operations, how we are actually based on that benefits that is bringing the new types of services to the market to monetize it, how actually this translates into the different type of operation, and then go back to the process. So the process is always in the center of the discussion, but I encourage, and I think this is very important, to start from the different angle, because when you are presenting something as a kind of a value based on argumentation from the beginning, everybody wants to hear more. Yeah, then we can give more.
Okay, thank you. And Adam, how does it work for you? Because from your perspective, you go somewhere and you have probably a job to do. And how do you convince your customers that, yeah, the automation is the way it should be done?
Long story short is it's faster. That's the short version. Generally speaking, it does cost less, of course, as well. And it's more reliable. So, and a lot of times, as we build bigger networks, as our customers demand us to do more complex stuff, ultimately, the old manual processes, like the telephony example that Scott gave earlier, they break down, and you have to ultimately replace them with an automated process of some description. So when customers ask me to do something, of course, the manual process is what they either already have or maybe they've got in their mind. So what I try to tell them, or when I go to them, I basically explain how an automated process, yeah, it's going to make it faster, it's going to make it cost less, but it's also going to make sure that it always works. It's going to work every single time, provided that the automation is reliable and deployed properly, essentially. So we see that as a very primary driver, both reusability, reliability, and ultimately, speed and velocity. And that's what our customers are asking for us, for sure.
Okay, thank you. And Scott, how do you feel about that? What you think it are the drivers for the automation?
I think there's highly aligned with what Adam B just said. There's this, hey, I can save time and I can do this more reliably. I can avoid, the fat finger. Those are all good atomic reasons. I do think there's room for us to do a better job on building and justifying business cases for automation. I see it as a real gap in the industry. It's something I've wanted to, start a work stream on in NAF. It hasn't bubbled to the top of the list yet. But I feel like companies like CodiLime can play a real role in helping define a framework for what it means to justify a network automation project. It might not be the same for all companies, but there could be different strategies that work in different organizational environments. One that came up last week, Dinesh Dutt, he's the creator of SusieQ, head of Stardust Systems. He basically said, never waste a good crisis. when there's a big problem that can be solved with automation, be ready to jump on it and show how automation can really help address a real problem when it occurs. Don't manufacture the crisis. Just be ready for it. But that's something I'd like to do with NAF and other pro services and engineering firms. Like, what is it? What would it look like to have a model for how first level, second level managers and leaders can help run interference so that everybody can do their automation job?
Okay, thank you. But that's the one side of the story, how to start with the automation. And what about the pushback? That probably there will be some pushback regarding the fears that comes along with the automation. You've already mentioned that with your speech, that sometimes people think there are jobs involved. So how do you feel about that? How to overcome those?
Yeah, it's so first of all, you can't ignore it. Disruption is a real thing. And we have to think about, okay, what happens if this leads to the elimination of a couple positions, right? We need to be thinking about how do we handle that organizationally? What other opportunities are there for training for people to take on other roles, right? Don't ignore the problem. I think that's job number one. And don't just say, oh, everything's going to be okay. We've seen this many times in many generations past, and it's all going to work itself out. Yeah, no, there's always some disruption. How can we minimize that disruption?
Okay, Adam, and how do you see that?
Yeah, I'll just add like a little bit more. Basically, yeah, completely agree with what Scott just mentioned. I think the biggest thing is automation kind of elevates not just the technology, but the people that use it as well. So certainly me personally, like automating parts of my job basically allowed me to learn more than I've ever been able to learn before. And if I hadn't have done the automation, I'd be a long way back, probably still writing Perl scripts back from back in the day. So yes, I think ultimately when the business starts to push back, rarely I think I personally have not seen the business push back so much, like besides the initial cost investment. But of course the people do, the personnel do, because they are worried about the loss of jobs or the loss of potentially their skill from not having to do the manual processes anymore. But again, that's where I think we can talk to them and make sure that everybody feels that their skills are being elevated by the automation, not replaced, we'll say.
Okay, thank you. And
can I make one quick comment on that? And so because of everything you just said, I think it's a really good time to be thinking about, okay, what does it mean to like elevate to be an architect, right? Have the bigger picture view as the smaller routinized pieces can get automated. How do each one of us continue to grow and be able to see how things stitch together and connect to business justification? Sorry, Adam.
I totally agree.
I totally agree. And then what is important, like I can only look into the experiences I have. And honestly, I think we were successful in building automation more with a greenfield operations than with the transformation projects. And sometimes, very often, those companies who are greenfield, then they hired the guys from the transformation prospects. Why is happening like that? Because at the end of the day, this new organization maybe was totally different on the market. They were more active, more proactive. They had a kind of a better grasp to the customer, let's say, visibility about their network. They are deploying their services they are serving, and their, let's say, accuracy in assessing what is really needed in terms of an investment. So at the end of the day, this is exactly the point. Like, it's an holistic view. Never the situation is white and black. And being a part of the automation transformation gives a set of skills that actually is totally good for the development of a personal development of that engineer, of that architect. And I think this is the most important message I would give to anybody who is afraid about taking the journey towards the transformation of a network automation, because this is the unique opportunity actually to be seen on the market, which is still looking for those experts, and we are just at the beginning of this road. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe that next question, I maybe we can start with Adam. And how do you know that automation is network automation is not just yet another hype and it will pass in a few months?
I mean, we've been doing it for a while, which is a good thing. I mean, certainly from a hype perspective, it comes in waves. Certainly, as we see new technologies emerge, we see new platforms emerge, new orchestration tools emerge. The hype kind of builds, and then it ebbs and flows. One thing I will say is I think the scale of networks, of businesses, of enterprise, doesn't matter whether it's an enterprise or you run an ISP, it kind of means we can't go back. I don't think we can ever go back to the old way of doing things, mostly manually, slowly, with a high degree of error. Network automation is always going to be around in some form. And again, I think we're just now starting to see the level of maturity from a lot of vendor platforms as well, where we actually can start looking at how we extract more value out of the network. So I think in a lot of those ways, we're actually building on top of stuff that we already have, which is going to, essentially feed it back into just continually improving the actual what we do in the network automation space. So I see it as a growing space for sure.
Okay, and Scott, how do you feel about that? Because from our perspective, it's probably a discussion also.
Yeah, there is again, bad news, good news, right? There's a sense for the sample that I know really well, people who are actively engaged in network automation forum, that's self-selecting, right? People get involved because they want to learn and they want to do more with network automation. That's maybe 60%, 65% of the audience. There's 35 to 40 that are satisfied to not really move forward with automation. That might be okay for certain individuals in certain roles, but it does provide some drag, right? So all we can do is work with the folks that want to learn more and want to get more mature about it. I will also say one of the keynote speakers back in Denver in November was a guy named John Willis, who's really involved in the DevOps movement. And he really challenged us in his keynote to don't get too stuck in any one silo. Think more broadly. Think about what's happening not just in your automation team, but what's happening with the folks who maintain Jira and trouble ticketing. What's happening with those requirements that come down from the CFO's office. Think much more holistically and about how automation and other pieces of your operation stack connect. And I think having a holistic view is kind of like growing up and figuring out, okay, how do we connect all this again to business outcomes, measurable business outcomes.
Okay.
So I think that this is going to stay for long, and as a good example, because I like the example of telephony, but in automation we have also very good examples on other industries. Like look at the parcel type of services, how they changed last decade, and we can think like, okay, how far we are today from that point of view where, for example, end user of a network service is able to get instantly, anytime, during the process of from ordering to actually invoicing and paying, about the status of, let's say, realization of its order in terms of a network service. We don't have that. And that means we will be there. And the question is whether we are going just to be part of that, because someone later or sooner will do it. So it's not a hype, it's going to stay. And to some extent, we don't even imagine, because just in my example of field, like optical network, we used to think it's a terrestrial and subsea, but now optical networks goes to space. So just imagine what can happen there. Like when we are going to have a kind of a satellite communication implemented together with the subsea and terrestrial. Yeah? This huge potential of automation.
Okay, thank you. So if we all agree that automation is here to stay, so we really see a future, and there are some values we can present as business. So holistically looking, how to start with automation? What would be your approach to that? Go ahead, Adam. We can have you.
Yeah, so I think this is what I already said, and this is my simplest method. It's like first, and I really thank you, Scott, you noticed that, because this is about making a value-based argumentation, kind of a business case that could be shared between different either departments or different companies. Like, I did that, it's maybe small piece, but I got this and that benefit, and you can take it and you can try to calculate your own benefits. And I think this is really the beginning, like sharing experiences, but real tangible data, like realistic data of benefits. This is number one. And second is, again, it's about competence development. So sharing not only the knowledge about exact tools and exact languages, but also about what we experience via this and that kind of a process implementation, how we grow from here to here, what really was a kind of a holistic view of between silos cooperation. And this kind of competence is missing. And I think if we solve those two equations, like we are able to share the use cases and we are able to kind of share this in a manner of experience sharing with competence development, I think that is going to work.
Okay. And Adam, from your perspective?
I think when it comes to starting with network automation, I think the key thing is really to find it's definitely to build a business case for whatever it is you're trying to ultimately design and develop. In terms of just taking the very first step, it can be as simple as just finding something that you know is a repeatable process that you want to automate, right? Sometimes that process can be something really, really basic. It could be like, I don't know, configuring BGP on an edge router, or it could be something immeasurably complex like full policy change management or a GitOps approach to config management and versioning. And the important thing is just to get started. And then at some point, you're going to have enough engineering knowledge and design knowledge to be able to actually put that business case together to your management and say, like, look, if I can invest enough time in this, I'm going to see very tangible outcomes. We're going to see, business value. And ultimately, we're going to have a more reliable and repeatable process. So ultimately, although it sounds a bit obvious, the first step is to just get started, basically, from my perspective.
Okay, thank you. And Scott, anything from you?
So great minds think alike. That's part of what I was going to say, right? There's so much material to just get started and try certain basic things, right? That's really good. And no one cares about your career like each of you do. So it's in your vested interest to continue to upskill and try new stuff like this. I will also, back on the, what does that business case discussion look like? I think there's other developmental and training priorities we need to put on that first level, second level, engineering manager, operations manager, and leadership to figure out things like how can I create processes within the team where automations get built, shared, maintained, and curated so they don't just end up on Adam 1 or Adam's 2 laptop. What does it mean to lead in this space, and run some interference, but also create an environment where, it benefits everybody, right? And not just the one person that wants to learn Python. Yeah, right. And just do it for themselves.
Okay, thank you. So maybe we have time for some questions from the audience. If there are any questions, I will give up my mic.
How do you see the future automated networks? Are they going to be somehow automation is going to be on top of the legacy networks, legacy protocols like BGP, etc., or are they going to be totally redefined? Like we have like the concept of software-defined networking, where we have some protocols that basically configure some hardware devices to basically whenever they receive some packets, then process it to some other interface based on some certain conditions. So basically, are they going to be on top of what we have right now, or is it going to be something totally new in the future?
If you asked me 10 years ago, I would have given you a full speech about OpenFlow, and I would have been dead wrong.
I had OpenFlow in mind.
I would have been dead wrong. I think, to be honest, what's most surprising to me is I think it's going. This is my opinion. I think it's going to be a mixture I think there are some customers where software-defined networking and basically reinventing the stack of protocols that we as engineers use every day makes sense. I know I'm sure we've all read the several white papers out there for production OpenFlow use cases by big companies that I shall not name. I still really like the concept of SDN networking personally, but ultimately I think there's still so much space for, I wouldn't use the word legacy, but traditional maybe is better, network engineering. And on top of that, now we're seeing automation just fully accept that, yeah, we have to automate that as well. So I'll hand it over to Scott. Do you have an opinion on that as well?
Yeah, I don't disagree with what you just said. I do think from a practical perspective, an automation overlay will be where most work gets done in the near term. You know, there could be innovations, right, where we do get new protocols or new tools or both that implement that end-to-end control, closed loop that I was referring to earlier. I think one of the problems with OpenFlow, we're working. Well, so here's a big problem. OpenFlow actually was a step backwards in that you already had automated population of a FIB, a forwarding information base, from a RIB, a routing information base, that worked really well. And yes, Nokia did it differently from Cisco, did it differently from Juniper, does it differently from Arista, etc. But that was already working. And, who wants to use at scale the equivalent of assembly code to program FIB entries? That, I think, interesting experiment, and we learned some things from it. But I think ultimately that's why it failed, is because it was undoing some things that were already automated.
Yeah, and one thing more is that we are all always living in some kind of a bubble of information. We are silos, and we need to understand that. So just to give you a little wider perspective, just imagine there are different type of technologies of just modulation. Let's say modulation. That's the basic layer for communication. So you will go to the orthogonal one in radio, you will go to the coherent DSPs in optics, and there is no way in the world that can be done by the generic type of a chip. So you will have always in the world, because of its physicality, the kind of domains that are unbearable to be taken by the other part, and that will create always kind of a heterogeneous network types, network elements. And then we have people. And people are always trying to do their best in their domain. So you will have the IP stack in those radios, you will have the IP stack in those actually other domains of modulations and transports and etc. So it will never be one system. And once there is no one system, there is no one language, there is no one protocol, there is no one homogeneous network, and there is no one homogeneous automation. That's why many years ago you had this telemanagement forum founded, yeah? And there will be always this kind of discussions, and we need to always be kind of a very humble, saying, okay, I'm in my domain, I can think this way, like it was the domain of ONF or whatever. And but if I go like larger picture, wow, it's an ocean of other things, and at the end the network needs to be run through the service throughout all these different domains. So, and there's more to come, because the networks, even physically, we know today, in 5 years from now they will be totally different. Yeah.
So right now we have a pretty nice word when a Nokia router can talk with the Cisco router using an open protocol such as BGP. However, when we have automation and each vendor cares mostly or only for their own devices, don't you think that network automation will enforce on people more homogenic networks and lock them down into a single vendor? So if you want to have a full stack of automation, you have to have all devices from us, not from the competition.
So again, I mean,
It's
I'm a
covered it
representation of
partially,
that evil, guys. Look, it's at the end of the day, it's about money, yeah, isn't it? So, it is the development of SOCs costs, yeah, development of chipsets costs, development of a software that is going to run over costs. So that's why we had the last, let's say, 15 years of a journey of developing whatever kind of a virtualization, containerization, etc. But what we discovered throughout the process, the performance suffer. Yeah? So we were going with those basic stuff, but for the access network. But when it comes to the kind of serving the multiple services, going aggregation, core backbone, etc., again we stuck because we needed those bad guys to develop those DSPs, those chipsets, those performing like hell, well, never breaking with 6 nines kind of a devices. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's exactly like that. We can contribute, and we are as a Nokia contributing a lot to many forums and etc. But at the end of the day, our customer is just coming and saying, "Look, I have just this amount of money, and are you going to give me like the full stack of networks elements, plus the management system, plus some services? If I can do automation on it, is good. If not, okay, I will live with it." Because this is at the end of the day the money they are willing or not willing to spend, and this is just the, you said it's a router it's a router IP domain, yeah, and but we need to go all the layers, yeah, we need to go optics, IP, microwaves, radios, core, and all that's all of that. So I think there will be like tendons always will be there, willingness can be there, but at the end, this is a business case.
I'll just chime in. My 2 cents on that question is a good question. I think to an extent it does, until everybody reaches some level that exceeds the basic barrier of entry. It's the same thing like anybody I'm sure in this room. You don't really care if your customer asks you to automate against ServiceNow or Jira. They both provide HTTP APIs and modern forms of authentication. For me, to be honest, the most networking equipment is already almost there. And I think improvements in commonly used packages like NetMicro, Python, Ansible lower that barrier of entry further. So yeah, I think definitely there'll always be a tendency to say we want everything to be homogeneous and be the same. But I think ultimately in our space, we're sort of driving not necessarily in either direction for that one. And me personally, it doesn't influence like my decision for sure. Scott?
I don't work for a vendor, not anymore. And I'll actually stick up for the vendors a little bit here. I like the way that you put it. Commonality up to a certain point where the basics, I'm horribly, yeah. I think we want vendors to be able to innovate. I think we need it. And it's going to result in something looking different from the other vendors sometimes. It's not always going to be good, right? But that 1 time out of 10 where it provides something really transformational, we all benefit from it. So again, it's striking this balance of enough commonality of operation. BGP, OSPF, and ISIS are really well understood right now. We're getting there with automation constructs. But leave room for vendors to do cool new stuff. Like when somebody figures out a way to do something that no one else has ever done before, let them put it out there and let them be the first and see if they can drive the industry. If people like you see the value in it.
In my opinion, intent-based networking is the source of innovation, intelligence, and orchestration. And then, okay, we may have multi-vendor environment, right? With the specific API per vendor if needed, right? But within this IBM fashion. And this is something that we could move forward. What is your opinion about it?
So I don't know. I think that I spent last 6 years really deploying networks where this kind of intent-based architecture was a key concept, and it was mandatory, let's say, to do it. Yeah. And what I saw is that I think one point is that we are at the beginning. This is the number one. Second is that it is very often totally misunderstood by the market. What does it mean? So everybody thinks immediately when they deploy intent-based, everything is gonna be like it was before. They're going to have a beautiful graphic user interface NMS. They're going to run their kind of whatever CLI type of scripts. And when they discover, no, it's a whole new concept, and even your architecture of a network element configuration is going to be totally different, or your network element is going to run another type of a binaries on it, they usually say, maybe I will do it just for 10 pesos of my network. So this is what I see today. Let's hope it will be better. But I don't see the drawback here from the vendors or from the industry. I more see like the kind of an existing transformation is not yet fully in place. And it's not only transformation of the architecture and the network itself, but also it's a kind of a transformation needed in the way we run things. And I think this is in here, the lead would be on the service providers. It's more than on the industry, I would say.
I have real hope here for this emerging class of tools that are LLM based. If you look at the improvements that the ChatGPT models have made with taking verbal input, I think ChatGPT 5 is going to blow us away, and 6 will blow that away. And the ability to take intent stated in the most highest abstract human terms and turn it into device configurations on every element in a certain path. I don't think that's crazy. I think we'll see that in a couple years. It might require specialized LLM training, but hey, there's a market for entrepreneurs that might want to try and build those tools. I think we're seeing the beginnings of being able to really take intent and be able to ask clarifying questions and turn it into service instantiation and network infrastructure.
Yeah, to be honest, I completely agree with what Scott just said. I think when it comes to intent-based networking, as with everything, as we move more towards it, we're going to see, some things bubble to the top. As with all technology, all new technologies, it's kind of like a sieve. You put a whole bunch of things in the top, you shake it a lot, the good stuff, comes out the bottom in theory. So I think that's where it is. To be honest, in my personal space, I don't see a lot of it at this point in time, so I'm probably not qualified to give a better answer than that. But yeah, I think it is something that's interesting and something to keep an eye on for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess that's it about the question. I know, Alp, if you're ready if the script has finished, so we can show actually. Just one more question, okay? Just one last one.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the thing that we were talking about, the upskills and engineers upskills. Yeah, because I was last time I was thinking about when I was checking some job offers on LinkedIn, and I'm not sure if it's related more to Europe or North America or not, more Europe or more the Polish market. When I see the list of things that you need to know as a network engineer, or people are network engineer and can do something fluently in Python or Ansible. Well, I see the last things I saw that was you must be perfect in network stuff. Like it's okay, it's obvious. Then it's okay, it's Ansible and Python. Also, sometimes it's happening when you have bigger environment than it is Go. You need to know it or basics. Then you need to know all three cloud vendors. Then you need to know Terraform. Then you need to know, oh my gosh, I don't know now. I won't say that DWDM there is, because if you're not in service provider, then it's not bother you. But a lot of styles, and I sometimes I think I'm not ready, to be constantly upskilling, because there's a lot of things that people are putting on my back, on my network engineer back. So I'm not sure what you're thinking about. And the second question, small question. Do you think that I've heard the statement that it's quite good if you have
people that are coming from the network engineering and trying to make automation things, it's quite good to put in those teams 1 or 2 software developers, real hardcore software developers, because then the team can be upskilled really well in those the coding skills. Is it true or not, or it's just it's particular way?
Maybe I can take the first question from the point of view of a person who's actually recruiting engineers. So it's not like you have to know everything. It doesn't work that way. What we do in CodiLime, but this is like a common thing. We build teams, and the team has to know everything, not a single person. It's not gonna happen, like never, because as everyone said here, environment changes, tool changes, they grow. So you won't know everything at the same time. Yes, you have to know the networking. You have to do it. You are asking if we put software engineers in them. Yes, we do, because we want the network engineers to be upskilled with the software development, but we also learn software engineers the networking, and it works both way. But as you mentioned, like public clouds, couple of programming languages, you don't have to know everything. You have to have some basics, maybe not in everything. You have to have some of them, but not everything at the same time. At least from our perspective.
And so I would say pick something that can help you grow where you are, right? Start with something. Again, don't try to take on 3, 4, 5 things right away. The scenario you just described, are you familiar with the Hollywood movie Moneyball? It's about baseball, and it's about how you build a baseball team, but it's about I can't replace person X with person Y. What I need are the skills on the team. And it doesn't mean the team will look the same in every organization. As long as I have the right skills on somebody, and hopefully on multiple people in the team, in case somebody doesn't decide to come to work tomorrow or gets hit by a bus or what have you. But having the mix of skills is critical.
Yeah, also just to add my own experience, I totally understand where you're coming from. I think most of the time, like Monika mentioned, you're not really expected to know all of those technologies. A lot of the times, as well as engineers, we like to try to think that we need to be experts in every single thing. You probably don't have to. Like, if you can look at something like Golang, for example, if you're a Python developer, and just understand the concepts at a high level, that alone is probably going to get you like a very, very long way in the industry versus, having to think, okay, I've learned Python, now I have to learn Golang, because ultimately I've tried that a few times, and what it ended up meaning is by the time I finished learning like Golang, for example, I've forgotten my Python, right? It's not good. It doesn't scale, we'll say. So that's my perspective as someone that's gone through that journey, I would say.
Yeah, so I think that I can put a little perspective of statistics here. So I think we have in Poland around 5 or even 6,000 people in R&D in Nokia. And from time to time, we are running kind of a survey. What are you doing in your daily job in terms of a toolbox? Yeah. And imagine we are doing here everything, like from FPGA programming up to the configuring network devices and etc. So within those statistics, we have probably network knowledge about protocols in 10% of the people. So that gives a little statistics. Like, I think it cannot be that the one person possesses all the knowledge. It must be a team. And from statistic perspective, as we develop things here in Poland, it's totally like that. So I just confirm what you said. It's a team which needs to be skilled up with all the things on the way. But for one person to have all that, I would say it's even impossible. Maybe if you found such a kind of requirements, it's only like this. It's a generic understanding there is such a thing existing, and more or less like what is the impact of it, but definitely not the expertise of the field for everything. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yes, that was the last question. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for this panel. So, Scott, thank you, Adam. And Adam, thank you very much. Looks like the automation is here to stay with us, at least for some time.